What was your biggest, we need to leave now, moment? Story 1. Was 15/16 at a house party with my good friend, another girl. There were some gatecrashers who turned up, which weren't unusual at London house parties, but these guys were older, and there was just a vibe. A girl I vaguely knew was very drunk and being surrounded by them, and I asked her if she was okay and she told me to fuck off, I'm fine. I looked at my friend and said to her, I'm gonna call my mum and dad to come get me, do you want a lift? My parents were always amazing and said to me that if I was at a party or out and for any reason didn't want to be where I was, I could call them and they would come and get me. My parents turned up, coats on over pajamas, and took us both home. Apparently half an hour after we left, someone was stabbed, the girl we had asked earlier was sexually assaulted, and lots of stuff was stolen and people beaten up and held up at knife point. I had such a feel in the air that I've hardly felt before or since and knew we needed to not be there. Story 2. I posted this in a similar one of these threads a couple of months ago, but I'll paste it over here. I used to drive for Lyft. April 2018, I picked up a young couple from a bar at about 1:30 a.m. They were fairly chill and I figured it would be my last ride of the night. The dude asked me to stop at a corner store on the way to their destination so that he could get cigarettes. I didn't see any harm in waiting, so I stopped, and had a nice chat with the young woman while he was in the store. He ended up being about 5 minutes since everyone was trying to get their pre-2M beer. When he came out, he asked me to take him to a location that was in the opposite direction of their destination, but was only about a mile away. He said he wanted to meet some friends real quick and grab some beer. Since I figured it would be my last ride of the night, I said, fuck it, why not, and drive him over there. Now, I know the town we live in fairly well, but the direction that we were coming from was not a way I was used to going when I would go to this location. So when I turned onto the destination street, I missed the turn into the complex parking lot. I just came to a complete stop since the roads were empty and asked them if they just wanted me to park on the street or pull into the complex. This is when the two of them started arguing, as he suddenly wanted to go in and hang out for a few minutes while she didn't want to go in at all. She just wanted him to do his thing and get out of there so they could go home. And then something hit my car. The sound is unmistakable to me, so I immediately started to look around to figure out what it was. But there were no other cars on the road, so that couldn't have been it. Then I moved to the next thing on my mental checklist: if something didn't hit me, then what did I hit? But that didn't make any sense either, as I'd been in park and couldn't have hit anything. It's at this point that the young lady's attitude completely changed. She just kinda looked around, and then said, can we just get out of here? It hurts and I want to go home. This was odd to me, as she'd been sitting in my car for about 10 minutes at this point and hadn't said a word about any kind of pain. She followed this up with, it hurts and I can't move, put her hand to her back, and pulled it out covered in blood. What the fuck? So the guy starts freaking out, thinking that something in my trunk had exploded, but it was empty. As he reached over to tend to her, I noticed something white sticking out of the seat. This hadn't been there at the beginning of the night, so I asked him what it was. He pulled on it. It was a piece of the filler fuzz from my seat. It came out of the hole that had been made in the seat. Because she'd been shot. As soon he grabbed that fuzz, we both had the same realization. He slammed shut his door and I drove them straight to the hospital, which was only a couple of miles away. That realization, and the follow-up realization of, oh, someone could still shoot you while you're sitting here, was one of the most terrifying things I'd ever experienced. Story 3. When I was 15, a friend and I went for a lot of walks around town, small town, around 5 to 6K people. We were going to the cyber cafe in town to meet a few friends, and we often took different streets to get places, just to keep it interesting. We were about to go to Main Street off one of the side streets, and a man on a bicycle approached us. He got off his bike, and asked us a couple small talk questions. Something didn't seem right about him. He was probably mid-40s. We both kept inching away but didn't want to come off as too rude, so we answered about the weather or traffic. Then he paused and we said we had to go, and he said, and I'll never forget it, you look so young, I don't want to get in trouble, but I need to touch someone. I just need to touch you. You should come with me. And he started rambling. I just felt terror, couldn't even speak. I grabbed my friend's hand and turned. We sprinted the rest of the way to the cafe, and as soon as we were inside we asked to use the phone. I called my mom to pick us up while my friend told the worker what happened and what the guy looked like. A month later I got my first cell phone. Story 4. I was waiting for an Uber on the outskirts of Atlanta with a couple friends around 10 p.m. We were just shooting the shit after leaving a nearby restaurant and talking about what bar to go to. A disheveled older man walked up a few feet behind one of my friends and struck a weird pose for 2 to 3 minutes while looking in our direction, and there was no one else around. Then he walked off without saying a word. He came back a few minutes later and sat down on the sidewalk about 5 feet away from us. At this point I'm just wondering if he wants something from us, because there was absolutely no other reason to plop down that close to us on an empty sidewalk. Then a small sedan pulls in a nearby parking lot, parking behind some bushes in the spot closest to us and consequently furthest from any of the shops in that lot. I only noticed because I happened to be facing that direction, but then saw 6 guys pile out of the sedan and immediately cross the street directly towards us. I realized there were not any shops or restaurants still open nearby. It suddenly occurred to me that the strange dude might have been sizing us up when he was watching us earlier, and he came back to mark us. We were all dressed nice with smartphones out and watches visible, basically the fanciest stuff we had for a night out. Right as I started to speak up that we should head back towards other people, our Uber pulled up to the curb. As we drove away, I watched those 6 guys talking in a circle where we had just been standing, and then they crossed the street again and got back in their car. I'll never have a definitive answer, but I'm pretty sure we were 10 seconds away from some unfortunate shenanigans. Story 5. A couple of friends and I were outside a house party talking. I noticed out of the corner of my eye something dart behind some bushes towards the end of the block, maybe 4 houses down? It was dark out so it was hard to tell. We stood there a bit long and I swore I saw something again move to a tree a little closer. This wasn't the best neighborhood, heck my whole hometown isn't the safest, and I knew a couple people at the party were involved in some stuff so I don't know if that entered my mind or what, but I got immediate goosebumps. I said, "Let's go now." A couple of my friends looked at me weird, but later one told me they knew by the look on my face something was up. I apparently looked possessed. I had my keys so we ran to my car and got in. I didn't even let anyone get their seatbelts on, I just hit the gas. Based on the news stories, less than probably 5 minutes later a group of people shot up the house we were at, the others standing outside were severely injured or killed. Turns out a couple guys at the party were thought to have killed someone's family member and it was a revenge thing. This was over 20 years ago and I still get nervous if I'm standing around outside, especially if it's dark. Story 6. I was in college when I had my first solo apartment. This guy across the hall would come over, or invite me over, and we'd hang out a few times. However, I would not call him a friend. One night he asks me to loan him some money. In addition to not wanting to loan him money, I don't really have any, so he proceeds to ask for a ride to see his girlfriend because she has some money for him. I agree. We arrive at her apartment and a small party is going on. When we walked into the party, everyone immediately shuts up and stares at us. He runs off to find his girlfriend, who I find out is his ex-girlfriend. It is awkward because I'm kind of this guy's friend by association, and I'm getting lots of angry stares. He gets into an argument with her and we are basically thrown out of this place. He then asks if I can take him to another part of town. He owes another guy some money and needs to go talk to him. We proceed to an unfamiliar part of town, and he instructs me to park in a fairly isolated spot. He explains that he doesn't want the other guy to see my car, because he might take it. He owes this guy money for gambling or drugs or something else bad, and he is way behind on his payments. I left him and spent the rest of my time in that apartment avoiding him. Story 7. Was in Mexico City with family including 2 daughters. Grabbed a cab on the street around 10 p.m. to take us back to the hotel. I was somewhat familiar with the area since we had been there 4 or 5 days already. Cabbie totally passes the hotel district and starts heading away from the part of town we were in. Streets were getting more and more residential. I demanded that he pull over and we GTFO and walked back to the hotel, probably 3 or 4 miles. He was probably just padding the fare, but I was not going to take a chance on being kidnapped so we flew. Story 8. Posted this before, but was very late to the party. I was on a date with a girl hiking a trail system that I knew like the back of my hand. Something felt weird but I shook it. We went in around sunset. We were going to swim in one of the deep pools in the creek. Maybe 2 miles into the trail I get the feeling again, and she's talking her head off, but I was just listening to everything around me. I told her to stop talking, and she looked at me very concerned. I just put my finger to my lips and listened. I heard something familiar but I couldn't place it. We never stopped walking. We came to the arroyo just before the creek pool, and I heard it again. By this time I knew. I told her we were going to walk to the clearing where the arroyo was at and turn around. She told me she heard something weird. As we came to the clearing we stood there like statues, dead silent. Her nails cut my arm from gripping it so hard. Then around 15 feet from us, the biggest mountain lion I've ever seen crossed the clearing with 2 of its young. She looked at us, and as our eyes met, my soul left my body. And I felt her grip tighten around my arm even tighter. She stopped and so did her babies. I'm guessing she sized us up, and then just kept going. The babies kept turning around looking at us, but ultimately they just slowly crossed the top of the hill and that was that. We turned around and told everyone we saw on the way in that there was 3 mountain lions on the trail. They all turned around and left. That was the first time I was ever scared out in nature. I didn't have a handgun on me, I had been there 100 times. She told me the sound she heard was a deep purring, and that was what I kept hearing also, I just hadn't put it together. Story 9. When I was a paramedic I was in a basement taking care of a shooting victim. The fire department had not arrived yet. The cop, having cleared the basement, was not with me at the time and my partner was in the ambulance getting some equipment I needed. As I was kneeling down working on my patient with 100% focus I felt a hard steel object placed on the back of my head. It was a shotgun. The shooter apparently was still in the basement and I was alone with him. He told me he shot this guy for a reason and gave me an opportunity to leave. I left. Story 10. At a party when I was about 19. I was on the top floor with my friend and he mentioned to me that he and the guy in the corner had been in a pretty nasty fight about a year ago. That guy is giving us some eyes and staring us down. My friend said not to worry, but I did not like the vibe this guy was giving. I saw the guy talk to his friend and send him out of the room. I told my buddy, nope, we are leaving now. Much to his protest, as there was a girl he liked at this party. I practically ran down the stairs, grabbed our other friend by the hood of his sweatshirt and ran to the car. As we are backing out of this long country driveway, I see the guy, his buddy and 4 or 5 more of them run out of the house with baseball bats and they chased us down the driveway. So damn glad we got out of there when we did. Story 11. About a decade ago, I was driving my Miata with a friend to a track about 4 hours from home. We left after dinner the night before so we could wake up there and get an early start. About an hour from our destination, 11 p.m. a crazy summer storm hit, heavy rain, high wind gusts, lots of debris. I told my buddy that early 90s windshield wipers couldn't keep up, I couldn't see shit, and I just felt like I was white-knuckling the steering wheel. I decided to hit the exit, we'd get some late-night food at a Waffle House and wait out the storm. We sat down and I had a TV in sight and I was casually watching. Almost immediately, a weather map came up and showed a tornado pass right over where we would have been a few minutes later had I not exited. Story 12. Driving to Disney with Hubs and 2 little kids, 4 and 5. Stopped at a gas station in Tifton, Georgia at about 10 p.m. Wander in a little bleary-eyed with the 2 kids looking for the bathroom. Clerk looks at me funny and points. While I'm in there I hear, she's got 2 babies with her man. Just let them pee and go. I grab both kids and walk straight back to the car with only a small head nod to the clerk. Hubs was done pumping gas and about to go in himself. I yelled for everyone to get in the car, I would explain later. As soon as we pulled out I called 911. The operator told me they were already en route and to vacate the scene, took my info and wished us a fun trip. Walked into a gas station robbery with 2 little kids, peed and left with no issues. Bad gas wasn't that bad of a guy and let us go. Story 13. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana, and years ago my brother wanted to adopt a dog from a small rural town about 2-ish hours away from NOLA. It was an easy enough drive, but as we got close to the town, Clinton, Louisiana, I started noticing a ton of police driving around. No sirens, nobody speeding by, but I think I probably saw 15 to 20 patrol cars in the span of about 10 minutes. We get to the house, meet the foster mom and the dog, who is the sweetest thing in the world, decide to adopt her and head home about 2 hours later. Everything seems fine. Tolly, the dog, climbs up into the front seat while I'm driving and falls asleep, leaving my brother to sit in the back by himself, which was hilarious. We keep driving and notice that there are even more cops driving around, but still no sirens. They're just everywhere though. As we're leaving Clinton, maybe about 3 miles to the exit or so, I notice this old white sedan come flying up on our rear, flashing their lights, honking, etc. I didn't really think about it, but I figured maybe these people were hurt and needed help or something. It definitely wasn't a cop car, but it was unusual for sure. I started to pull over to the shoulder and they pulled over as well, about 10 to 15 yards behind us where they stopped. I stopped the car, and when I turned around I looked at my brother. For some reason, as soon as our eyes met, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I realized that there was something very wrong about this. I still hesitated, wanting to see if somebody needed help, but as soon as the door of the car behind us opened, a voice inside my head said, "Get the fuck out of there right this second." I peeled out and sped for the exit, making sure nobody had followed us. We got back to New Orleans safe and sound, but the entire time, I was watching for that car to ensure they didn't follow. I never learned what happened with all of the police cars or the white sedan, but something was really wrong. I should have listened to my gut way sooner. Stopping even temporarily was really dumb of me. I hypothesized that there was a drug raid or something, and the cops were looking for somebody while we were driving through. The white sedan was trying to get us to pull over so they could carjack us and dodge the cops further. I don't know though, and I hope that it wasn't innocent and somebody needed help and I bailed. But I don't think so. I think something fucky was going on. Welcome to the end of another Thread Tales episode. Join us again for more captivating AskReddit stories that bring us closer through shared experiences.